My name's Russell Spatz. I'm an alcoholic. It's good to be here, and I haven't found enough to have a drink since January 25th. How long has that been? When's my birthday?
January 25th.
1981. So I'm in my 46th year of sobriety, and it's good to be here with you guys. And this is my. What do you? You're my security dog. What are you?
Security banana.
Security banana. So because I'm old and it's the dementia thing, you know. If I say to you, I've got 3 things I want to talk to you about, by the time I pass 2, I forgot the third. So that's just the way it is. It's good to be. I woke up this morning. I love this group. Now we figured out how this group works. This is one of the oldest step series in the history of AA or something, or in Florida or something like that. And I've been doing step series here for like last 30 years or something. And we figured out what's going on with you guys now. You just rotate. I go, and then Stevie B goes, and then you get Peter Marinelli, and then you get Pat Rogan. You know what I mean? So they just keep on. It's like the Life is Good group. You know, it's like they keep on doing that deal. So it's good to be here. And I'm sorry if you've heard all my jokes or you're not brand new or something like that. So I was walking down the street. It's true. You don't get ahead of me. I was walking down the street. And a few years ago, and I saw this sign. It said cruise Miami Beach. It said cruises to the Bahamas, $10. So it was like the $10 dog, but they said no, this is legitimate. It said $10. So I walked in and I said, "You have a sign out there. It says cruises to the Bahamas, $10." I said, "Yeah." He says, "Well, is that true? Cruises to Bahamas, $10?" He says, "Absolutely." He says, "You got to cruise to the Bahamas for $10?" He says, "Yeah." I mean, this is a cruise to the Bahamas. It's $10. That's all it is. He says, "Absolutely." He says, "You got $10?" I said, "Yeah, I got $10." He says, "You're on the cruise." So I take, I take $10, and I had a few years in AA, so I give him $10. Next thing I know, I get whacked on the side of the head. I go unconscious. It's a true story. It's a sad thing. And I wake up in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean on one of those, what do you call those rings that go around you?
A dinghy.
What are those rings? Like in one of those light preserver.
Yeah.
I think it had something on like SS Alki or something. I don't know what it had on it. And I'm floating, and there's no land in sight. And the sun is setting. And I'm floating east towards, I guess, where the Bahamas are, I guess. I don't know. And, of course, I'm scared. There's, like, sharks out there and shit like that. And I can't believe it. I look ahead towards east. I see a guy in a similar sort of deal. The same, the SS Alki and everything. And he's like 100 yards ahead of me. And so I start paddling to the guy, and I finally get up to the guy. And I say, "What the hell? What the hell is this? You really?" He says, "Yeah, you're telling me, man." He says, "I went and said $10. You hit me up." He says, "Hey, you're telling me? I'm in the same situation." He says, "I don't even see if there's any land in sight. We could die out here. Literally, the sun's going down." He says, "Hey, you're telling me?" I said, "This is hard. No, this is serious. This isn't a joke. This is horrible. We could die out here. We don't even know where we're going, what's happening." He says, "Hey, you're telling me?" So we're just sort of floating together. I don't know, I guess 2 alcoholics. I didn't even ask. We're floating together. So finally, it's getting late. Sun's going down. And so I turned to him and I said, "You think they feed us on this cruise?" And he says, "I don't know. They didn't last year." I lied. That actually didn't happen. In case you're slow, you know what I mean? That would be fucking crazy, wouldn't it? This morning when I woke up and I knew I had to do this thing tonight, I don't really plan anything, as you can probably tell from what's going on right now, but I don't really plan what I'm going to say. And I'm thinking about this meeting. I woke up with scripture on my mind. I'm thinking, what am I going to say? And blah, blah, blah. And I actually did the meeting in my head in like 5 minutes. I had the whole meeting down. And I just want you to know, it was fucking brilliant. I so enjoyed the meeting I was doing. I couldn't wait to do it for you. It was like exciting. It was all inspiring. I had an epiphany. Did you hear that, Cindy? I had an epiphany.
She's not on.
Yeah, she's not on?
Nope.
Okay.
Let's shut down the meeting.
It was an incredible. And so but unfortunately, I forgot what I was going to say. So, but let me tell you something. It helped me out a lot, So I'll tell you so tonight's theoretically the third step, maybe. We'll see how this thing works out. It's whatever you get out of it, or nothing. I don't know. We'll see. So I want to talk to you about three things. In the seventh step, see, I'm already on the seventh step. On the seventh step, you see, I don't really I do milkshakes. I throw a little seventh step, a little third step, a second step, this. I sort of put on the machine. And then I got a milkshake of steps, I must be talking about the steps because in 46 years, I'm a product of Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, you may disagree with me, and that's fine, and I may be full of shit, and that's fine too, but I'm going to tell you something. Whatever's coming out of my mouth, you're looking at a guy who's a product of going to over 40,000 meetings, sponsoring. I'm a product of Alcoholics Anonymous. I may be a bad product, you know what I mean? But this is not, I'm always trying to push the envelope. I'm always trying to get thrown out of AA. Pushing the envelope. Fuck the traditions, you know what I mean? I'm always trying to get people to. I don't feel like I'm doing a meeting unless 25% of you guys walk out and say, "Who the hell invited that asshole?" You know what I mean? I just like upsetting alcoholics. I spent my whole life trying to get people to like me, which is really tough. But let me tell you something. If you stop worrying about what they think about you, it's a fucking cinch to get them to hate you. Yeah, it's so easy, Say anything. 3 people are going to say, "Who's this guy?" I'm leaving. They're going out the door or something. They got to listen to this crap, So the bottom line is that in the 7th step, this is a line in the 7th step. It says every step, the basis of every step is humility. I was actually going to do my world famous talk on humility tonight, but I never do it with a group this small. But the point is, the basis of every, and it goes on to say this: unless you develop some humility, an alcoholic will never stay sober. You know why people drink? It's not because they stop going to meetings. It's not because they stop doing the steps. That's not why they drink. Nobody ever asks the question, well, why do they stop going? You know why they stop going to meetings? Because they become arrogant, conceited bastards, and they have no humility. Because my very nature, the chief characteristic of an alcoholic is defiance. You tell me something that I ought to do, and in my mind I say, fuck you. I'm not talking about you guys, because I can always tell when I'm with a group of people who are spiritually evolved to a point where you don't even need AA. But I don't like people telling me what to do. I don't like them preaching at me. I don't like me telling this stuff. And as soon as I start feeling strong, like I'm picking up my 6-month medallion, a 9-month medallion, or 10-year medallion, I start playing God and running my own life. And I decide, what I need. You're not going to tell me what to do. Who do you think you are? You ain't taking my inventory. I'll take your inventory. I got my problem. I start feeling strong. I start turning back into the person I was before I stopped drinking. So it says, unless somebody has some humility, he cannot stop drinking. And unless he develops even more of this essential quality, he'll never find true happiness. How would you like to find true happiness? How would you like to be rocketed in the fourth dimension of existence? How would you like to experience heaven and know peace? I mean, the not drinking thing, everybody gets that stuff. How would you like to stop worrying about what people think about you? How would you like to, how would you like to not be anxious or be in fear or be in envy? Well, how would you like to stop worrying? That'd be cool. I mean, the drinking is but a symptom of the disease. That goes quick. Everybody stops drinking. Everybody who comes to A stops drinking. Well, they may only stop drinking for a week. We're over 100 men and women who have recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. You know what a hopeless state of body is? You swear to yourself you're not going to have a drink today, and by 5 o'clock you're tanked. You know what a hopeless state of mind and body is I got to stop drinking. I'm not going to drink today, and by 3 o'clock you're at the bar drinking. That's what a hopeless state of mind and body. Every one of you have recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body. If anyone drinks here today, it's not because he hasn't recovered from a hopeless state of mind and body because you guys are sober. It's because they're insane. Right before you take that first drink, if you're sober, you know why you take that first drink? Because you're insane. You've heard it all and everything, you're doing it anyway. That's why it happens. So it says, number one, in the 7th step, unless you develop even more of that essential quality, you'll never have true happiness. But there's a connection between humility, insanity, which is in the 2nd step. We talked about it in the 2nd step. We're going to talk a little bit about it tonight. There's a connection between insanity and humility and faith. All men of faith have courage. All men of faith have courage. They don't worry about what people think about them. They don't worry about the people in the group like them or not. They have courage. We never apologize for God. When they say all men of faith have courage, the way you know whether somebody really has true courage is whether they talk about God unashamedly. I know that because the Big Book says we never apologize for talking about God. We never apologize for our faith. That's the way Dr. Bob was. He never apologized for his faith in the Lord. He says, and then right after that, like it's linked up, because all men of faith have courage. If people, Bill Wilson said to Henrietta Seiberling after he said all that stuff about the Lord has been so wonderful to me, curing me of the troubles I got to talk about and tell him, but the worldly clamors blocked out his presence. And a couple of people in New York laughed at him and thought he was stupid and he worried about them. That's when he went up to Henrietta Seiberling in our literature, if you should care to read it, and he said, I think we shouldn't talk about God or religion. And Henrietta said to him, he says, Bill, the only reason you're sober is because of God. You got to stop worrying about what people think of, what alcoholics think about you. They've been pleasing themselves all their life. You better start thinking about what God thinks about you. This is what Henrietta said to him. He says, because if you don't talk about God and what he's done for you, you might as well be the Rotary Club. And she says, finally, Bill agreed. I don't know. Did he agree? Well, you're going to have to read a lot more books. You might have to read The Next Frontier when he was 23 years sober and he had lost his way. Now, Dr. Bob, on the other hand, was a co-founder. He was always an avid believer. And if you ask Dr. Bob, what's this thing all about? He said, the books we found absolutely essential were 1 Corinthians 13, Sermon on the Mount, and the book of James. You want to know what A's about? Read the Bible. Read the good book. He said, you know what first things first was? Dr. Bob defined it as seek ye first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all things will be added unto you. Dr. Bob's last words to Bill Wilson says, Bill, let's not screw this thing up. Let's keep it simple. To Dr. Bob, this was simple. It's all about turning your life over to God. And there's something about it in the big book. I don't know what it says. What does it say? It says, burn the idea into every alcoholic's night. What does it say in the last page? It says, your real reliance has to be on God. He will show you how to create the fellowship you crave. See that your relationship with him is right, and great events will come to pass for you and countless others. Isn't that what it says? It says something, you'll know us, you'll finally be in not the fellowship of the problem, not even the fellowship of A, but the fellowship of the Spirit, whatever that is. And what does the 6th step say? It says, this is the step that separates out the kiddies, the children, the men from the boys, the little girls from the women. And what does they say the sixth step is all about? The man who is trying to get rid of anything that stops him from growing in the image and likeness of his creator is the man who's actually doing the sixth step. Just shit I'm throwing out. All, by the way, all conference approved stuff. You can't excommunicate me for that. It's all in the big book. First AA meeting, you know what it was? Dr. Bob putting his foot on a dining room, the rung of a dining room chair, and reading Sermon on the Mount, Matthew 5, 6, and 7. These are, you're entitled to your own opinion. These are facts. You know what I mean? That's the deal. You couldn't go to a meeting for the first 5 years. Doesn't say, rarely have we seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path. The path was you couldn't go to a meeting unless you got down on your knees and gave your life to God before you were allowed in the meeting. You were doing the third step because they'd ordered you to do the third step. They ordered you to do the third step before you got into a meeting. You didn't have some clown in the back of the room saying, well, if they had told me to say something to God, I wouldn't be here, because they wouldn't have been there. That's AA. That's the real AA. You don't believe me? Read Dr. Bob and the Good Old Timers, I'll tell you, it'll do you. I mean, if you want to get like 30 or 40 years. The great fact is this and nothing less, that there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find him now. The great fact is this. God has to become the central fact of your life. You must be convinced that he lives in your heart and mind in a way which is indeed miraculous, doing things for you that you could never do for yourself. Hey, that's not me. That's our big book. That's our program. I don't care what the hell they say in your rooms or stuff like that. That's the program of recovery. And you're going to find a few things as you get older. So in any event, what's the connection between insanity, being insane, and having faith? And having faith and having humility. So let me give you let me sort of take you through, just give you a sort of hint on this. And this is just my own life, it's my own experience. I love the line in that commercial, that farmer's commercial, where they have this guy who says, "We know a lot because we've seen a lot." There's a book, the book of John says, I just tell you what I know and what I've seen, and you don't believe me. That's okay. But what can I say if I'm telling you my experience? I'm telling you my experience. I used to jump at meetings where there were guys at 20, 30, 40, 50 years. I wanted to hear what they had. I didn't want to hear what that guy was saying who had 2 days. The thumb-sucking crybaby. Nothing wrong with it. They get monopolize the meeting and do all that stuff. I wanted to hear what the guy with 20 years was talking about, or 30 years, or 40 years, or 50 years. I wanted to know the secret, so I wouldn't have to hang around here. I'd just grab the secret and then I could leave, you know what I mean? And do whatever the hell I wanted to do, right? I just wanted the secret. So I'm going to give you the secret. Whether you accept the secret, it's not up to me. I'm just giving you the secret the way I understand it. So I'm talking to a gal. My sponsor told me, when I first met him, my first sponsor, I've had 4, he said, I said, will you be on my side? He said, yeah, I want you to do 3 things. He says, I want you to, here's this book, 24-hour book, which was a 24-hour book, was what they used for like 40 years. Many of us still use it. And it's a combination of the big book and the Holy Bible. He said, I wanted you to read a page from this every day on your knees and ask God's help to stay sober every day. And I did it for 15 years. I don't remember him asking me whether I believed in God. I can't even tell you why I did it. I can't even, all I can tell you is somebody told me to do that, and I did it. I didn't say, yes, bud, or you don't understand, or I'm different, or I don't believe. I just did it. I don't know what the difference is between a man who does what they're told, because the big book says we're undisciplined. That's part of our problem. It says God will discipline. I don't know what the difference is between a man who does exactly what he's told, no matter how smart he thinks he is or what his background, and somebody who has doubts and say, listen, that's not my deal, that's your deal. I know what the difference is between somebody who stays sober for 40 years or 50 years and somebody who doesn't stay sober. It's a matter of whether you're listening to somebody who has something you want and doing what exactly they tell you, whether you understand it or not, because you're probably not going to understand why they're telling you to do it. You know, along the way, you might look back and understand why you did it. All I know is that's what I did. He told me to do. He said, I want you to join a group. I don't know why he told me that, but I went out and I didn't want to join a group. You know what I mean? But I had to go out and I joined the group. And he said, if you're going to drink, call me up first. Don't call me up afterwards because I don't want to talk to you. I'm not going to be talking to you. You call me up before you drink. There's 3 things. I did all 3 of them. Yeah, I don't know why I did that. I don't know why I followed directions. But I did. So here's the deal. So there's this great line. There's a guy named the Apostle Paul. Maybe you guys heard of him. And there's a real truth. I'm going to give you a major truth for alcoholics right now. And if you don't like it because it comes from the Bible, that's fine. Then forget it, okay? But I just want to give you the truth. And then you can say, screw you, Russell. I don't believe it because I'm not a Bible. I'm going to give you the truth. So the Apostle Paul wrote 13 books. Let me give it this way. This guy's a major character. 13 books out of the Bible. You know? I mean, he's a whack job. He'd be here with us. He's the guy who said, I do the things I don't want. He's like a crazy, but he was the guy they all looked up to. He wrote 13 books. This is what he said. He started talking about, you know how we get up here and say what it was like, what happened, what it's like now? He started doing that deal. He said, this is what it was like for me. I was crazy. Something happened to me. I can't even explain what happened to me. And then he says this. This is the line he says. He says, I can't talk about all this stuff because I don't even understand what happened to me. He had 14 years. He said, it happened 14 years ago. I can't even explain it. He says, all I can tell you is this. In place of these incredible things that happened to me when I stopped drinking, incredible things, he says, I was given a curse. You know? What do you call that curse? A thorn in my flesh. A thorn in my... You guys who are sober, have you ever had a problem thinking? Yeah, let me ask something. If you stop thinking, wouldn't you feel better? Isn't your problem is you can't stop thinking? You think about bad shit, about yourself and other people. I mean, every once in a while you get a good thought, but then it's all fucking wiped out by the bullshit. If I only had this, if I only had that, what's going to happen, everything like that. You know, I know that's the way you are, not because I'm branding you that way. That's because I read the big book, and I read the sentences. And the sentence is this: alcohol is but a symptom of the problem. Our real dis-ease centers in our mind, not our bodies. So I know where the disease really is. I had it before I started drinking, during the drinking, and after the drinking. It's because I'm nuts. I'm insane. I have no control or discipline over my thinking. And it's probably most of the people I heard in my life by irresponsible things or saying stuff or doing stuff. I wish I could say it's alcohol. Alcohol made me do it. Let me tell you something. Most of this stuff I did in my life to hurt people, I was cold stone sober. You know, I need alcohol to be an asshole. I really don't. So this is this deal. So this is what he says, to keep me from becoming conceited. You know what conceited means? It means you think you're a hot shit. You think you're in control. You're controlling everybody. You know nobody can tell you what to do. I'm not talking about you guys, because you guys I know are different. But I mean, you know, I graduated Department of Honors Mathematics. I was going for a PhD in algebraic topology. I went to law school. I used to try first degree murder cases. I put people in jail. You know what I mean? That's a powerful thing. Nobody, you're telling me what to do? Nobody's going to, you're going to tell me what to do? You kidding me? So here's the deal. This is what the Apostle Paul says. To keep me from becoming conceited, God gave me a thorn in my flesh. What's the thorn in your flesh? Well, the big thorn is alcoholism, because you all got it. If you tried alcoholism, you got alcoholism. It's in your brain. He said, to torment me. He said, it says, Satan put it there. It was like a horrible thing. He says, now this, he got on his knees. He said, I asked God to remove it, and God said this. This is what he says. This is before AA. But this is the book they were studying. He said, I will not take your alcoholism away from you. How do you like that number? Are you wondering why he hasn't taken it away from you? I mean, he should have done it by now, don't you think? I should have done it for me. I'm 40. You know why I'm not taking away from you? To keep you from becoming conceited. Now you're going to like this one. He says, because when you're weak, you're strong. Because my power, there is one who has all power, that one is God made you find that, is made perfect in your weakness. My power is made perfect in your weakness. I know you guys want to be large and in charge and strong and in control and not have to worry about the God thing and just get sober and wonderful and everything and run everything, control everything, you know. Then one day you get cancer and you're going to die, or one day the IRS comes in or something happens, all of a sudden you're not in control and you're panicking and you're thumb-sucking crybaby, or whatever the hell it is, you know what I mean? But the bottom line is, just remember one thing. God's power is made perfect in your weakness. And by the way, the reason you're here tonight is because at one point in your life, you got beaten down so hard, you actually walked into an A room and picked up a white chip. And it wasn't because you were a hot shit and you knew everything and you had all the money and you were riding the crest and you had the blonde or the brunette or you had the husband or whatever it is. It was because you were beaten down. And the day I picked up my white chip, I was at my best. I had the best attitude you could possibly have in AA, and it was all downhill from there. Every medallion, everything that told me that I was okay now allowed me to start playing God and move away from this thing, and took me away from humility. Took me away from humility. And what you'll find out is, and this is the truth with the third step, there's a third step where you get down on your knees. You know, you get down on your knees and you say this prayer. And then it says, you have now completed the third step. You give your life, you know, the third step prayer, and you give your life over. Let me tell you something. It's good to do that. It's a good thing to do. I did the third step. I got up and then I checked my bank account. And then I started managing my life. And look, listen, I'd hold hands and say the Lord's Prayer. I do that. But let me tell you something. 90% of my life was worrying about money, property, prestige, romance, and all that other crap. And I gave like 3% to the Lord, 3% to God. Because our tendency, it's easy to rest on your laurels, but we're headed for trouble because our tendency is to leave the God we love or the God we even, like Bill Wilson. One day he's saying, the Lord has been so wonderful to cure me of the troubles. He's not got to keep talking about it. The next day he's saying, I think we're talking too much about that shit. And he's writing Appendix 2. You know what I mean? And that's the nature of the alcoholic. Because we're insane. One of my sponsors used to say, you know the problem with alcoholics? They get too well too fast. You know? I was talking to a gentleman, and he's just getting out of treatment. He had like 28 days, and 2 days he gets out of treatment. He was telling me that he's, I said, where are you going after treatment? He says, I'm going with my parents, who, by the way, are drinkers, to the British Virgin Islands. So I suggested to him, in the way a kindly person, gentle person like me would suggest to somebody, like, are you fucking nuts? Humble. You have a fucking brain in your head. You're on 3 forms of medication, transazone, blah, blah, blah. You got 28 days. You're a slipper, and you're going to the British Virgin. Well, what can I do there? I already bought the ticket. You tell them no. You say no. And then some good person who was in AA thought I was being too mean. He said, nah, you can do that stuff, you know. You know something? I would at 23 days, I would have been scared to go even out of the bedroom unless I had my sponsor with me. You know what I mean? I mean, why take the risk? You know what I mean? Why take the risk? So, the point of that is, I did the third step. Down on my knees, the third step won't keep you sober. Because in this world, with what you're facing and what you're going through, and with your brain, wouldn't it be great? Stopping drinking is pretty easy. You guys all stop drinking. You don't have any problem with drinking. Stopping worrying is a whole different story, isn't it? Stopping having high anxiety is a whole stopping panicking. Stopping waking up every morning saying, if I only had this, if I only had that. How about stopping self-pity? Stopping feeling sorry for yourself. Stopping comparing your life and your insides with other people's outsides. Stopping the worry thing. Stopping all that stuff. The greed, the pride, the false pride, the lust. Stopping all that stuff. Stopping judging yourself. Stopping talking to yourself. Stopping the voices. You're such a piece of shit. You're never going to be okay. Stopping phoning up. Stopping not understanding anything, stopping listening, stop not listening, what does that take? How long does it take to where you stop worrying about what people think about you? How long does it take before you can walk in a room and you can say exactly what's going on and talk about God and talk about, that kind of stuff? All men of faith have courage. They trust their God. We never apologize for God. This is big book stuff, by the way. Verbatim. Instead, we let him demonstrate in our lives what he has done for us through our testimony, through talking about it. At once, we begin to outgrow fear. How would you like to outgrow fear? You're never going to outgrow fear if you can't put your faith in God and you can't talk about it. And the reason you can't talk about it is because you're scared. Because some banana in A is going to come up and hit you over the head until you're killing newcomers. And the reason he doesn't want you talking about it, he may think it's virtuous, is because it bothers him. And we have an AA axiom: whenever you're disturbed, no matter what the cause, there's something wrong with you. And it bothers him is because if you're right, then he may have to do it. And he feels perfectly good running his own life and playing God. This is a generalization. All generalizations are probably wrong, including this one, but you got a lot of people here that are doing their best to keep you from the truth. Keep you from knowing the truth. What's in the big book. You know what's in the big book and what's in the 12 and 12 and what's in Dr. Bob and the good old timers. So, my sponsor told me to get on relay, which means you're the guy, when they call up AA, they get you. From 8 o'clock in the morning till 8 o'clock at night till 8 o'clock in the morning. You pick, and I did that between 4 or 5 years sober and 10 years. It was for 8 years I did that. So if you called up on any Friday night at 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, you got me. So nobody got sober during that period of time. Trust me, they didn't. So I get a call one day from a lady who's got a PhD in nursing. It's 1 o'clock in the morning. He says, "Can I talk to you?" He says, "Sure." So I said, she tells me I got a PhD in nursing. I'm a single mother. I've got a 4-year-old child. And I've got a high-paying job, blah, blah, blah. And I'm under PRN, which means she's being watched. I've got a year's sobriety. And the other day, she tells me she took a drink. And I'm scared because if he finds out, I'm going to lose my job, and you lose my kid and everything like that. He says, "So I need help. Would you help me?" He says, "Sure." He says, "I want to know how to stay sober, what I have to do." He says, "But there's only 2 things." I said, "What's that?" And she's sober. She's telling me this stuff. He says, the only problem is, I want you to tell me how to do this thing, but the problem is I don't want to do anything. I don't want to do anything with Alcoholics Anonymous. So I said, "Well, you got 2 problems." He says, "What's the 2 problems, Miss PhD? What's the 2 problems?" I said, "Well, the first problem is I'm in AA. I've been in AA for 5 years, whatever it is. And I stopped drinking. I haven't had a drink in 5 years. And the only way I do it is by going to AA meetings. So the first problem is I don't know what Plan B is. It's not that I don't want to help you. I just don't know what Plan B is." He says, "Well, what's the second problem?" I said, "You called Alcoholics Anonymous." This is 1 year sober. Fucking insane. Now I want to tell you, for every story I tell you, I have 100 more just like it, but we don't have time. Second story. What was I? I was 9 years sober. 9 years sober. I've already been the intergroup. I'm in charge of the intergroup bank for two years in a row. I'm doing step series like this all over Dade and Broward County. I'm sponsoring anything that moves. You understand what I'm saying? It doesn't matter. If you're a fucking frog and you say, "Will you sponsor?" I'm sponsoring you. I'm not doing it. Because whenever AA is there, no matter what, I gotta personally fucking be there. You know what I mean? I talked to Johnny Harris and I said, "Can I have your number?" He says, "Yeah." I says, "Well, what is?" He says, "It's in the book." I said, "Your number isn't unlisted." One of the best circuit speakers. "Your number isn't unlisted?" He said, "Russell, I'm in Alcoholics Anonymous. I don't know what fellowship you're in, but I'm available." I mean, anytime my sponsor, anybody I talked to, it was always like with a whack. You know what I mean? They couldn't be nice about it. It was always like they whack me and then they tell me something. You know, here comes the pain. You know, and so I'm doing everything in AA. I'm Mr. A, all that sort of stuff. And so it's not like I'm not doing the steps. I'm not sponsoring people. I'm not doing this thing. You know. So I have a friend named John. John's got 11 years. He's got 2 years more than me. And John says, "Listen," and if I told you this before, you heard from me, just do it again. So I said, repetition isn't a bad thing for alcoholics. You know what I mean? They're not even listening to you the first time anyway. So yeah, he says, "Russell, let's meet at this restaurant. You know, I've got the name of the restaurant, JJ's Diner, and we'll go to the meeting over at the Sunset Room afterwards." I says, "Sure." I go to JJ's Diner. I sit there. He's not there. You know, he's not there. I'm sitting there. You know, I got, whatever it is, 9 years, and he's not there. So I sit there, I do the dinner, I mean, I'm like stood up, by this guy. He's a good friend of mine. We're both lawyers and everything like that. And so I go, he's got 11 years. So I go to the meeting, and there's John. I said, I went over to JJ Steiner, you were there. He says, "Yeah, something came up." That's all he says. Doesn't say, "I'm sorry." He says, yeah, something came up. I couldn't make it. That's the end of it. Okay, he says, "But I'll tell you what, tomorrow night I'll meet you there. And we'll go to the some other room. I don't know what it was, car room or something." I said, "Okay." So I go there, and he doesn't show up. So I go over to the car room. There's John. I said, "I was over there at JJ Stein." He said, "Oh yeah, I had to meet Sally or something. Whatever that is, and that's the end of that." So he says, "But I'll tell you what. Don't get ahead of me here. I'll tell you, I'll meet you at JJ's tomorrow night, and we'll go to this other place, and." We'll go to this other place. And I said, "Okay." And I go to JJ's Diner. I can tell you're ahead of me on this one. He doesn't show up. So now I am livid. I have justifiable anger. I mean, even with 9 years, I am just going nuts with this thing. When I went to the things, "Oh yeah, something came up," or something like that. So I go see my friend Dale, who's got 40 years. Because he's going to know the answer. I'm going to tell them what's going on, what this guy did. And I tell Dale everything I just told you. And he said, Dane. I called him Dale, Dane. And may he rest in peace. And he listens to the whole thing. And then how do we get a new perspective in AA? Anybody know? By repeated humiliations and the final crushing of your self-sufficiency. Now, you could either be crushed out there. You could be arrested and crushed. You could lose all your money and be crushed. You can have all sorts of bad things happen to you in public and crushed, or you can go to the right sponsor or mentor, and they'll gladly crush your fucking ass. You know what I mean? In private. So I go to Dane and I tell him the whole story, and he starts beating the living shit out of me. And he only wanted to know one thing. Why did I show up the second time? And you ready for this? And I had done 15,000 4-steps, and also I was a stepaholic. I was teaching the steps. And you know what the crazy thing is? I didn't know. It seemed perfectly logical. And the guy said the second. So I didn't know why I showed up the second time. I didn't know why I would whore myself out and prostitute myself for people that were not there for me, not emotionally available for me. I didn't know why I was doing that all my life. I didn't know. And I'd done all the steps, and I was sober 9 years, and people were saying, "Thank you, you helped me out very much." And I didn't know. You know why? Because I was 9 years sober, and I was fucking insane. And I didn't know it. And you can be 12 years sober insane and you don't know it. You could be 20 years sober and saying you don't know it. You could be 30 years sober. You could be 46. You could be insane. You don't know it. You know what I mean? Because the truth of the matter is when you get the big picture of this disease, you know, there's always a little insanity left that you don't even see. Where a guy that's 10 years ahead of you would say, you tell him this whole story about your life, and you say, well, why is this bothering you? And you think about it, he says, well, I don't know. Well, if it didn't bother you, how would you feel? Well, I'd feel great. Do you want to feel great? Yeah. Let's figure out why it doesn't bother you. But I got 20 years. I haven't figured that. I don't know. So here's the point on that as far as the humility is concerned. It's one thing when you're picking up a white chip and somebody tells you, you got to do this, or do the third step, or take this book, or read the 24-hour book, and you do it because you're scared of drinking. It's one thing when you go to meetings all the time, maybe 2 or 3 meetings a day, whatever it is, because your sponsor tells you to do it, and instead of saying, you know, well, you don't understand, or I'm different. It's one thing when you do that and you're picking up a white chip, or you're picking up a red chip, or you're picking up a 6-month chip. What happens when you got 2 or 3 or 4 years? You know? Remember that line he says, because when you're weak, I'm strong. My power is made perfect in you. How do you grow in AA? Even grow to the extent where in a weird sense you're not weak. You're strong, but you're strong in God. You're not strong in false confidence in yourself because you know you are nothing. You know you have no power. You know who you are and who you used to be. And like Henrietta Seiberling says, Bill, if you don't talk about what God has done for you, you might as well be the Rotary Club. You know, you got to keep in mind what's really keeping you afloat. You know what I mean? How do you stay strong when you have time? You know? How do you know? So here's the deal. So when I was 11 years sober and I was dying inside, like Bill was dying at 23 years. And I went up to some guy and says, you know, Russ, you got to stop. You got to up the game. You got to up the game. You know, you got to start going to Bible study, hang around men that really believes in God. Don't have some sort of imaginary shit going on. You got to find out, make it concrete, make it serious and everything. How do you do that? When you're speaking at conventions, you know what I mean? And you're all over the place and everybody's telling you, well, we're spiritual, not religion, everything like that. When everybody in AA is telling you, you don't do that thing, you can do it on your own, you can do whatever you want to do. But how do you follow somebody's directions when you think you're okay? When you got 10 years or 15 years? How do you show up and do that stuff? How do you hang on to humility, enough humility, where you do what somebody tells you when you have time? You understand that? And I can guarantee you, if you ever run into somebody who drank after 5, 10, or 15 years or 20 years, he didn't have a sponsor. He didn't have a sponsor he respected. And he didn't have somebody that told him stuff. He didn't put himself in a position to be with somebody he wanted what they had, and he's willing to go any length to get it. And when the person said, do this, they did it. He took control over his life. I got the God, I understand, you got your thing and everything like that. And he became conceited. And the only way I can stop from becoming conceited is I gotta wake up every morning and live a turned over life. I have to have God in my mind. I can't afford to say, well, look, I'm doing all these things. I'm doing because I'm smart, or because I'm good, or because I'm finally spiritual. I don't say I'm spiritual. I know I'm not spiritual. You want to know something? I am the Madonna of AA. I'm a material man. You know? And if you think you're spiritual, put your hand up here. I'm going to hit it with a ball peen hammer. We're going to see how spiritual you are. See what happens when all your money's taken away, or you got cancer. We're going to see how spiritual you are, sitting there in that MRI machine and everything. When you're lonely and you're scared and you don't know what to do, you'll find out about spirituality and how spiritual you are. You know, when that happens to you. And so I did the third step. Okay, but the third, I got on my knees, you know what I mean? I followed directions, but you're going to find out that where the rubber meets the roll is who you're following and what you're following and whether you can take directions when you got 5, 10, 15, 20 years sobriety and you do it. But, that's why they say in the 11th step, improve your conscious contact with God. That's why that deal is, that's where you're heading. That's the great fact, is this and nothing less. See to it that your relationship with him is right. That's what this whole program is about. So thank you. That's all I have.
Recovery Inspiration is sitting right there waiting for you. Rocketed.org AA speaker recordings brings real voices and real stories straight to your ears. Subscribe now so you never miss a new recording dropping. Keep that motivation on tap and help spread the word. Hit subscribe and let recovery find you every single day.